Hello, and welcome to Healthy California podcast. My name is Linda Brown, and I am the host of Healthy California, where my goal is to help educate you on your daily choices so we all can become healthy. I believe you, your family, your neighbor, and your community are all looking for better ways and simple ways to return to being healthy. Many of you have health issues or have family that's going through tough times that seemingly have no answers. It's frustrating. There are questions about health, environment, foods, exercise, and lifestyle, and it can be all overwhelming. And who do you believe? And where's the science behind it? This podcast will unravel the mystery behind being unhealthy and talk about little things that we can do in our lives to make a positive change in our health from all angles. So to be healthy, we need to have physical health, mental health, environmental health, financial and social health, and of course, spiritual health. Let's answer some of these questions to get healthy. What good is just listening to a podcast? I will give you resources as well, ways to take steps and make positive changes in your life to becoming healthy. This is a journey, not an assignment, so be kind to yourself. Hello, California. Thank you again for joining me this week. This week, I am talking about plastics and microplastics. So why am I talking about plastics and microplastics? Well, first, let's define what a plastic is. Plastics are synthetic material, man-made, that can be molded or shaped and made from polymers. So what's a polymer? A polymer is a molecule made of repeating smaller subunits, and polymers can be natural or synthetic. So like a protein is a polymer. It's just repeating amino acids is what a protein is. Fiber or carbohydrates is repeating sugar molecules. So those are polymers that are made by our body. But then we have synthetic polymers like plastics. An example of a synthetic polymer would be Teflon, silicone, polyester, those type of plastics. So why is this important? Plastics are endocrine disruptors, and they're everywhere. So I've talked about endocrine disruptors before. So an endocrine disruptor is a hormone disruptor. That's what endocrine means. It means hormones. There are also PFAS, and this is hard to say. I don't expect you to memorize this, but a PFAS is a perfluoroalkyl substance, or sometimes known also as a polyfluoroalkyl substance. So it's just easier to say PFAS. But there are also synthetic chemicals, but they're known as forever chemicals, meaning they will never leave. They're there forever. So PFAS do not break down easily, which is why they're everywhere. And we find them in our Teflon cookware, water-resistant fabrics, food packaging, firefighting foam, cosmetics, personal care products, stain-resistant carpets, furnitures, upholsteries in our car. So likely the plastic that was here when you were born, if it has a PFAS in it, it's probably still here, and it probably will still be here when you die. So just think about all that plastic that has been around your whole entire life, and it's still going to be here when you die. They're going to be here forever. Every bit of it. What are the causes of having plastics in our environment? Plastics break down into microplastics or nanoplastics. If you see plastic degrade, it's not completely degrading. It's just turning into smaller bits of plastic. And maybe even nanoplastics, like plastics you can't see, but they're still in our environment. They haven't completely broken down, which makes it easier to get into our environment, like into our water, into our air, into our foods, fish, into our body. Plastics are hazardous when they get into our body. A phthalate are plasticizers that increase the durability and flexibility of plastic. And they're used in food packaging, toothbrushes, toys, cosmetics, insecticides, nail polish, plastic bags, and phthalates leach into foods and water pretty easily, and they leach into our body because if it's in our lotion or our personal care products and we're putting them on our skin, they're going to go into our body. And again, these are like nano-sized particles, so we can't necessarily see them, but we definitely can feel them. And then we have plastics like bisphenols or BPAs. So BPAs are used in polycarbonate plastics and epoxy resins, like found in our food and drink packaging, water bottles, paper receipts, canned foods, and they also leach into our foods and waters pretty easily. paper receipts. When you get a receipt from the store or the receipt that spits out at you at the gas station, that shiny type of paper and the ink that's on them, those have BPAs on them. So if you are in an industry where you're handing people receipts all day long, I highly recommend you wear gloves or you are washing your hands often, because that's a lot of BPAs into your system. Here is interesting information. Europe recycles 30% of their garbage. China recycles 25% of their garbage. How much do you think the US recycles? We're the leaders in environmental issues, right? So how much do you think we recycle? Right today, as I speak, I have my recycling bin out on the street waiting to be picked up, and it's more full than my garbage bin. Well, the US only recycles 9% of their garbage. And that's hard to believe because our recycle bin is more full than our garbage bin many times. However, companies that recycle pull out what they can recycle, and then the rest of it goes to the landfill. So they're not really recycling 100% of what you put in that bin. And so why are they doing this? Well, there's no motivation to recycle on the business side because there's not a lot of money made in recycling, and it costs more to recycle than what it's worth. A lot of times companies will just take all these bottles and then they'll ship them off to a different country where that country will bury it, incinerate it. We don't incinerate a lot of our garbage because it causes air pollution, and other countries don't have the same laws that we do. So they end up burning it, we do not. So it's sad that we don't have a lot of recycling going on that we think we do. However, I think about a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, there was a law passed that plastics are to be 100% recycled by, I think it's 2035 or 2030. Right now, our plastic that we put in the recycle bin doesn't all get recycled because if you look at the back or the bottom of a plastic container, it has a number on it. And some of those numbers can be recycled and some of them can't, and that's how they're separated once it gets to the recycling place. And so by the year 2035, about 10 years from now, all plastics in California are supposed to be 100% recycled. And when I say plastics, I'm talking about single-use plastics. You're starting to see restaurants change their utensils to maybe to wood or bamboo, something more biodegradable. And I agree with that. I'm not trying to get on a soapbox or push any sort of agenda here. I'm just here to give you the information on what plastics do to your body. So I'm going to get off the soapbox of what plastics are doing or what they're not doing in the US. A plastic water bottle can take up to 450 years to degrade. Up to 450. Again, that depends on the environment it is in. But how many water bottles have you used in your lifetime? How many have you just used this week, today? How many water bottles has the world used in your lifetime? So where are all these bottles going for the next 450 years? If that's how long it's going to take to degrade. That's a lot. I'm just talking about water bottles. I'm not even talking about the other plastics from our laundry detergent plastics. So it's everywhere. It's in our environment. The Geneva Environment Network reports that the average person ingests 5 grams of plastics every week. So that's the size of a credit card. So that means that the average person is consuming 52 credit cards every year. That's a lot of plastic in our body. So that's why this is important. That's why I'm talking about what happens when plastics get broken down. They don't really get broken down. They just turn into small little microplastics and nanoplastics, and then they get into our body. So how does this affect you? Plastic exposure comes from microplastics, nanoplastics, and the environment that I just had mentioned. Plastics are inexpensive to produce and are used in all aspects of our life. We can't avoid plastics. They're found in toys, packaging, clothes, personal care products, food containers, cars, household goods, furniture, building materials, medical devices. So I want you to think about something for a second. We have plastics that, is in our environment, but we're also putting it on our skin. We have plastics in our makeup, but we have plastics in our cars, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that what we put on our skin to keep our skin healthy is actually destroying us. And it's the same thing that we use to eat, but then we don't want it in our body. It doesn't make any sense. And in the Bible, Genesis 1:28, it says, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. And this isn't intended for us to, be exploiting our earth and everything that's given to us. We're supposed to be good stewards of it, including our body, including our environment. So these plastics that we're putting in our personal care products are the same things that we're building materials with, and then we don't want it in our body, but we're putting it on us. It just doesn't make any sense. I bet you can look anywhere near you right now, and you're going to have something plastic next to you. Plastic has a long half-life that can be anywhere from 20 to 500 years. And that long half-life leaves the microplastics and nanoplastics or nanoparticles everywhere in our environment. It's everywhere. All throughout our food chain, our water, our air, it's everywhere. Children have the same exposure as we do, adults, right? So children have the same exposure to plastics that adults do. However, their detox pathways are not fully developed. So they actually have a higher toxic burden. Children actually have a higher toxic burden because they don't have fully developed detox pathway, but are exposed to the same amount of plastic. Plastics are endocrine disruptors, which I mentioned at the beginning. Endocrine disruptors lead to reproductive disorders, cognitive impairment, inflammation, and inflammation that leads to all chronic disease, obesity, hormone-sensitive cancers, thyroid dysfunction, chronic kidney disease, erectile dysfunction, testosterone deficiency, and pregnant women can pass on these plastics to their fetuses, leading to premature birth, stillbirths, birth defects of the reproductive organs, neurodevelopmental impairment, impaired lung growth, early cancers. I'm not trying to scare you on this. I'm just trying to emphasize that if we don't have a healthy detox pathway, we're going to have a bigger toxic burden. So also, microplastics can attract bacteria, and that results in a bacterial overload. And this is one of the reasons why women that get breast implants can sometimes get bacterial overload disorders, like get more bacterial infections. I'm not saying that all women that get implants have this, but if you have an implant and you get bacterial disorders, bacterial sickness, bacterial infections more often, that's just something to think about. And today, fetuses are born with a toxic overload. Fetuses have a toxic overload. So the umbilical cord of newborns have an average of 200 harmful chemicals that was reported by the Environmental Working Group in 2009. So in 2009, they reported that newborns have an average of 200 harmful chemicals. And that was in 2009. So that was 14 years ago? 16 years ago? I can't do my math. They're already born with a toxic burden, which is really sad. But that just goes to show that we can't avoid plastic. We can adapt to it sometimes, but it's leading us down this road of chronic disease. From the time we're born, we're already in a toxic burden, and it's too bad. But you can do something about it. So I don't want this to be a doom and gloom. I want this to empower you to take control of your environment. The question is not whether you have a toxic exposure, but more the question is how much of a toxic burden do you have? If you have a healthy liver, you're going to have a less toxic burden, and you'll be able to fight off disease easier. And there's more research correlating microplastics to mental health as well. So microplastics can cross the blood-brain barrier, leading to any kind of inflammation, including inflammation of the brain or the nervous system, oxidative stress, and that all disrupts brain function as well if it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is a barrier to protect the central nervous system from the rest of the body. So if we have something crossing that blood-brain barrier that's supposed to protect us, then that does damage to our central nervous system, including the brain. Then what do we do about it? There's plenty of stuff we can do about it. We can do a liver detox once a year. And I'm doing a liver detox program in June, so next month. So I hope you join me for this. And if you can't, there's still plenty of things you can do. You can avoid high-fat foods that are stored in plastic. Actually, you can avoid any food stored in plastic. And if you have plastic containers at home that you store your food in, I'm not saying get rid of that plastic, but the next time you buy a food container, consider storing it in something else, like glass or like stainless steel or something like that. Avoid storing any food in plastic. Avoid heating food in plastic, like in a plastic container and sticking it in the microwave. That is a great way to leach that plastic right into your food. Avoid canned foods and drinks in cans like sodas. So the canned foods have the BPA lining in there, and that leaches into the food. So if you think about like a canned food that has the lining in there, that's BPA. If the BPA lining is protecting the food from the can, then what's protecting your food from the BPA? Something to think about. And even soda cans have that lining on the inside of it. And sodas are very acidic, so they have the tendency to break that down. Let's see, what else? Avoid body lotions with phthalates or BPAs, and that should be on the label. It should say phthalate free, BPA free, and phthalate is spelled PHTHALATES. It sounds like phthalates. It's a weird word. Avoid soaps or shampoos or deodorants that have phthalates or BPAs. And you can go to the ewg.org and look for all the personal care products that are going to be friendly to your body. You can try to reduce the toxic burden by decreasing all your single-use plastics. You can eat high-fiber, very colorful foods. That gives us the nutrients for our liver to be able to go through its detox pathways. So eating high-fiber, colorful foods is always going to be a thing. I'm pretty much going to say it every single episode. That's always going to be a thing. You should get plenty of sleep, because when you sleep is when you heal and repair. And that's when your liver works. So get plenty of sleep, plenty of water for your cells. Each cell, every single little cell in your body has its own detox process. And then that cell goes through its process, dumps everything out into the blood, and the blood brings it to the liver, and the liver detoxifies it more. If your cells aren't hydrated, that whole process is going to slow way down. So you have to drink plenty of water. And then when, I talk about water, it's always like half your body weight in ounces. That's just a rough equation. Get plenty of exercise to keep your system strong and energetic. Exercise, sleep, hydration, and good foods will always be part of your basic health needs. Always. Those are always going to be part of everything I mention in your episodes that you listen to, because exercise is always going to be healthy for you, healthy for your body processes. Sleep is always going to be when you heal and repair. Hydration is always going to be part of the detox. And then good foods, same thing. Your body isn't going to be able to heal if you don't give it what it needs. But when it comes down to it, we're just trying to decrease our toxic burden by eliminating and avoiding some of the plastics. But we also want to increase the health of our livers so that we can detoxify the chemicals that enter our body. And we can't avoid that at this point. To avoid 100% plastic in this point in time is just about impossible. Then we have to do whatever we can to keep our liver healthy. So this is the reason why I recommend a liver detox every year, because we just can't avoid microplastics. So I hope you join me in this detox next month. And you can find the link to my website to sign up, and you can enter Detox 2025 to get a discount on that. And I will talk to you guys next week.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something new. Health care and treatment should focus on being proactive and preventative, emphasizing the importance of addressing the root cause of a disease or illness. While the U.S. has an excellent trauma medicine system, helping patients when problems arise, our goals should be to prevent disease before they happen. That's why this podcast is so important to me. If you're needing further guidance or have questions on a particular matter, you can find my contact information in the show notes, where you can set up a 15-minute consultation. I also recommend you adding a functional nutritionist, a functional medicine practitioner, and a physical therapist to your healthcare team. This podcast reflects my personal opinions based on extensive research and education. It is not intended for medical diagnosis or treatment and should never replace the advice from your doctor or other healthcare professionals. To continue providing this free information, I rely on your support. Follow, subscribe, like, and share this podcast with your family and friends, or on social media. Don't forget to turn on your notifications to stay updated whenever I have a new episode released. Educating you and empowering you to take back your health is my ultimate goal. By gathering knowledge and implementing small but impactful changes, you can reclaim your well-being. This is a journey, not a quick fix, so be kind to yourself, and I'll be there to help. You got this.